Thank you, Luke. I think it is fair to say that this has been an extraordinary month, and we have challenges that are unprecedented. Serendipity is a great thing. We decided some months ago to change the format of the plenary today to allow for a more engaged conversation. We indeed will have great opportunity, and let me tell you a little bit more about the format. Following my comments, we will move into a brief address by our different governance group leaders. Mark Schwartz will be first from the University Committee. We will have Sarah Morgan from the Academic Staff Committee, Stan Yasitis from our Classified Staff Advisory Council, and then Ryan Sorensen from our Student Association. We'll then have open discussion, and we'll move into a reception which is in room 280 across the hall. And I look forward to joining you all there. In my plenary this afternoon, what I'd like to focus on are many of the new developments and accomplishments since I've addressed you last fall. There's been much news about the state budget outlook in the last several days, how we may become a public authority, and some things regarding Chapter 36 that are all in the news. I will spend most of my time addressing what we know and some of the implications, my stance, and some of the things that we have underway to address these. I'll also focus on our important role as a public engaged research university, the importance for this region, the importance for this state, and why we absolutely must continue to the greatest extent that we can on the path that we have been on for some time. The talk really has these three different components. If we look at, first of all, the budget developments, I'll talk first about some of the elements that we know in the budget itself. $300 million budget over 2 years is the size of the cut, and that, as you know, is unprecedented. It's something that the state has not faced before. Certainly UW system has not experienced this. We do not know for UW-Milwaukee the size of the cut at this point. The magnitude of this reduction, combined with the last 2 years of tuition freeze and the next 2 years of tuition freeze, will continue to be posing significant challenges for us. So those are some of the things that we know about the financial or budgetary pieces. The next element is the proposed public authority, and some of you have been reading everything there is out there on this, and keep in mind how quickly this has all happened. This was something that even over the weekend there was much uncertainty about. So this first came to light in terms of the news, as we've all been seeing things on Monday and Tuesday of this week, and here we are Wednesday. Proposed public authority has a few key elements. Number one, we would no longer be a Department of State Government. The UW system would be established with a different governance statute. We would become public employees. We would have coverage by Wisconsin retirement system and our current and or future insurance that the state has. So those things would continue. There would be new autonomy as suggested or proposed and new responsibilities. UW system would have flexibilities in the following areas, potentially: procurement, HR, some building projects, and the work that we have around tuition. And you've seen, I think, probably some of the discussion and comments about that in terms of how that would be a flexibility given the cuts that would be important for us to have. Chapter 36 statutes, which have long been upheld as something unique and special in the UW system, would become Regents policies. These are the statutes that cover shared governance and tenure for our employees. So those would become Regents policies. The process is important to recognize because this is not a done deed. So this is the governor's budget proposal. That's what was announced in terms of some of the elements of it, but it hasn't even been announced. On Tuesday of next week, February 3rd, the governor will put his proposal forward. And in that, there will be a number of things that follow. So he'll propose on February 3rd the budget. The Legislative Finance Bureau will be the first group that will take his language and turn it into more of a legal document, more of a budgetary process that would follow with state law. The Joint Finance Committee would then take a look at this, offer their suggestions, and begin to hold, if has been done in the past, public hearings. We have had discussion with some members of the Joint Finance Committee about hosting one of those meetings here, one of those hearings here in Milwaukee on our campus. We have not got confirmation of that yet, but have had some preliminary discussions with a request for that. At that point, the budget is revised after the hearings. It then goes forward for Assembly and Senate debates. This takes months. Over the next several months, we'll see these developments unfold. There would then be a conference committee which would prepare a compromise version of the budget, and the governor at that point can make line item vetoes. Now, if history is any record of what can and has happened, this would be done by July 1st. That's not to say it will be, but that's the way that the steps proceed. Throughout the process, once the budget does become public, that's when we have great opportunity for voicing our concerns, voicing our opinions, putting forward our suggestions as the budget is developed throughout the spring. You have seen legislators begin to weigh in. You have seen many other statements from campuses. You've seen a number of individuals, whether it's in the blogs, whether it's in the news stories, online. There's a lot of different sources where this has generated a tremendous amount of news coverage. So this is quite in the news. There are some key dates that are important for us to keep in mind, specifically to UWM. First, there's the February 3rd proposed budget. Then there will be a day and a half on February 5th and 6th, next Thursday and Friday, where the chancellors, the regents, UW system staff will really try to understand and begin to absorb what this really would mean across the system. To what extent will there be efficiencies? To what extent will there be changes at system that could potentially mitigate some of the effect, some of the ways that things would be passed on? I don't mean to say that will necessarily soften the blow that much, but those are the types of discussions. So what will then happen is there will be some further discussion of what the expected consequences of this will be. I don't know how long it will take for system to make a determination about the size of the cuts that would be administered, but I will address the campus on Tuesday, February 10th from 9 to 10 in the Wisconsin Union Room. I will give you updates with respect to what we know, and we will outline our plans for going forward in terms of the different activities that we've already been discussing and planning, and some of the task force work that's being planned at this point. If there is anything beforehand, if there's anything that's particularly important or relevant or would be valuable, I will also send an update campus-wide next week, much like the message that I sent yesterday and have been sending in terms of the updates. We will schedule monthly all-campus updates above and beyond this, but as needed, we'll communicate as much as possible and want to engage the campus with these matters. As we turn the corner and we talk about what the possible impacts may be, there's a number of different aspects that we will look at. So on the budget side, if this proposed budget passes, as we see the discussion develop and have a good sense of where things are at as we get further down the road, we will need to examine a number of different things. We will have to look at strategic realignment of our resources and programs. How are we structured? How are we using our resources? Given the unprecedented nature of the cuts, we're going to have to ask questions and answer them in ways that we haven't before. And make no mistake about it, over the last 12 years, we have had cuts. We are operating as one of the leanest research universities in the country, but we are going to have to look at things again. Some of the possibilities, and I could list many others, and that's why I put the others that will be in there. There's no answer yet to what it will be, but we'll look at recruitments, we will look at layoffs, we'll look at travel budgets, and a number of other things. There's dozens and dozens of possibilities. At the same time, as you have seen, and most other chancellors have expressed this in varying degrees of evaluation, this could mean more flexibility. I think it's fair to say that these are benefits. If they do accrue, they will not be in the short term, but there could be flexibility, there could be autonomy. There is, in the wording right now, in the language that we have seen, more control by the Board of Regents on critical issues such as tenure and shared governance. That's the understanding of the public authority at this point. My stance, well, as just on a personal level, I think like all of us, we are deeply disturbed tremendously concerned about the impact overall of this on our campus and all of UW system. You can't look at this from a faculty, from a staff, from a student, from a concerned citizen approach and not be. I'm a person who's experienced 3 different universities' access, the higher education, the affordability, the things that we have at UWM have shaped my world, have allowed me to be here in the way that I am and I think many of you have experienced. It's something that is special, that is being threatened. It is something that has remarkable, adverse, unfortunate impact, and I can't help but feel the impact of this. From a chancellor perspective, as I think about the programs that I have watched, as I think about the departments, the students, the employees, the personal impact, the human factor of this, I can't help but be angry. I can't help but be upset. I can't help but really think about our mission and how we cannot continue in the same way with the same values, the same way to engage and make that difference that we do, that I'll talk more about in my comments. As I think about our mission in the state as a citizen, as I think about this as an educator, as I think about the values that we all have, why we're here at UWM, I'm deeply troubled. Again, I have to say that. It will not advance our mission. It will not advance more broadly where this state needs to go, the vital role that UWM plays, and I will talk more about that in a few slides, but this is my stance. I take this then as a challenge, as a provocation, as a mandate for us to really look at the support and advocacy for UW-Milwaukee as well as the rest of UW system. I think we have to stand together and we have to say, here's what we do. Here's the difference that we make. It's education, but it's much more than that. It's the livelihood of so many of us. It's the livelihood of the community that we reside in and the difference that we make in the region and, frankly, the world. I think we all believe and know that. I will do everything that I can to advocate and call for increased support. And I'd like to outline some of the things that we will do and have been doing. The things that are in process and in progress right now, what we will continue to work on is putting together a budget planning task force. I've asked Johannes Britz, our provost, and Robin Van Harpen, our vice chancellor for finance and administrative affairs, to co-chair this. There will be representatives of our faculty, staff, and student governance groups involved. This task force is going to be critical for helping us determine how to best manage our campus budget if the proposed budget changes are made. We have a lot of friends in the community. We have many individuals on our foundation board, our donor base. Various schools and colleges have advisory boards that can be reached out to and will be. I had a meeting of a group last Wednesday. This is a group that I sometimes refer to as a kitchen cabinet, or also known as an industry and community leadership group. I told them about the possibilities. I said, this is not known at this point. It hasn't been endorsed, it hasn't been announced, but some of the word that we're hearing. And many of those individuals said, I will be writing op-eds. What can we do? Who can we call? Those individuals will be engaged. Those individuals have been. They're very concerned, and they will continue to provide the kind of assistance that we need, as well as our alumni, deep alumni roots and base that we've got. We'll continue to have meetings with governance groups. We met with the university committee yesterday, the provost and myself. We've been meeting regularly with individuals on campus in different areas. Met with the deans on Tuesday morning, and we'll continue to have those meetings regularly and routinely. We will continue our advocacy with the state, with legislators directly, with the UW system, our Board of Regents, about what's going on. We will be announcing and rolling out very quickly our communication plan and talking points. It's in our best interest to develop even more crisply, more compellingly, our value proposition. What do we bring? How do we continue to add value to our work that we do? I would like to tell you my commitment beyond my view, my stance, and the things that we have underway. I will commit to you, if you don't know this already, that I will work with all of our constituents on and off campus. You have my promise that I will be open, I will be transparent and accessible. I will communicate with you regularly. We'll make sure that everybody's apprised as to the things that we'll be going through together. I am dedicated to our core values, many of them, but especially shared governance, no matter what happens, and want to uphold our other values. So we've now talked about what might happen. This is proposed in terms of the steps that are there. I'd like to stress, as I've been hinting at a couple of times, what I think is the importance of UWM. Had this been a different time, had this been a different plenary in terms of format and content, I would have really spent a lot of time on this up front. And I would have developed actually about 10 different elements that are critical, especially as an engaged public research university, the difference that we make. But I'm truncating that. I'm bringing it down to arguably some of the key 3 areas. And this is under the heading of why it matters, why as a research university in the UW system we make a significant difference and will continue to do so. The first area really focuses on you. It's the strength of our faculty and staff that make a difference for our students in our community every day. It's the remarkable work that we do. It's the attraction and the retention as I think about the options that all of you have had as to where you work, the types of things that you do, and where you could do those things. And I think about how you've chosen UWM, and because of that, we have a remarkable difference. It's clear that we have a cut above in terms of our faculty and staff. And that's why I think so many of the students are here today, because they know the difference that that makes. I look at this as a parent of one of our students. I look at this as a person who has been here for a long time, and I think about the difference as I look across the room, about the impact that so many of you have had because of that remarkable care, the dedication, and the honor with which you have fulfilled so much of our work. So that, to me, is clearly in the top 3. Second piece, as I've hinted at earlier also, is the difference we make more broadly in the region on 2 different dimensions of economic development. One of those is when we look at this particular issue of economic development is in the talent arena. So if we look at some of the background, when I was in a meeting last week and I was sharing some of the impact, Tim Sheehy, who's the president of the Milwaukee Metro Association of Commerce, said this is concerning to him because he shared that by 2023 there will be 5,000 additional entrants into the workforce aged 15 to 69. There will be 95,000 new jobs opening up between now and 2023 in the 7-county southeastern Wisconsin region. That's a gap of 100,000 college graduates that are needed to fill those jobs. When you put in the additional fact that most of those jobs, in fact 60% of them will require people with a higher education degree, and our current workforce has about 30%, so we're halfway behind that, there's a tremendous need for UW-Milwaukee to continue to provide the talent that this region needs across all sectors, across the arts, across healthcare, across engineering, business, you name the sector, and we have supplied with our 160,000 graduates, 80% of whom stay here, we have provided that talent. It's significant. If you look at company by company, we can go through. We had an economic study that was conducted last year, and we looked at the scores of companies that have hundreds of UWM graduates. There are some, like Northwestern Mutual, that has 950, Rockwell, 850. I could go through countless number of organizations. It's powerful. The second aspect of regional economic development, though, that UWM is distinctly different than most other campuses in the state, is around the intellect, the research, the true value add. And when I think about that, there's so many stories. This is something that would have had 5 to 7 or 8 slides. There was a lot that was over the weekend. As you can appreciate, this plenary has been changing by the hour. and if I were to give it tomorrow, it might be even a little more developed. But this is an area I'd really like to spend a little bit more time on because this is one of our truest differentiators. And again, one of the clarion calls for why so many of us are here. Everybody sees this all of the time. We see this in terms of the impact around what can happen when you have a research university that's distinguished from the other 20 universities of 20 higher education institutions in southeastern Wisconsin. It's why the companies seek us out. It's why we have the powerful partnerships. It's the difference that we can make in the products and the services, as well as in the value of our students that can do so much more because of the whole education, how we've given critical thinking skills, how we've provided perspectives that they aren't just trained for today's jobs, but really are trained in so many different ways. So as we think about a few comments here on the slide, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the heart, the economic engine of the state, that's where we reside. And this is a powerful opportunity, and that's why there's so many supporters of us. As we think about the M7 or Milwaukee 7, there's a number of clusters that we are in the sweet spot for. We have fresh water, aquaculture, water technology, healthcare delivery, whether it's in our College of Health Sciences, in our nursing, in our public health, in our social welfare, just in the health arena alone, energy systems, the different things that we do. Advanced manufacturing, biomedical technology, critical areas that this university has impacted and has potential to make so much more of a difference. One of our partnerships alone with Johnson Controls has resulted in more than $30 million in federal funding flowing into this region. So it's powerful what we do. The final piece is where we talk about the impact of UWM on students, community, larger region, and the world. As again, over the years as I go through the campus today, and I think about the experiences that I've had, I walk by Cunningham Hall, and I think about the 82 different locations, 180 to 182 different locations across the region in which our nursing students conduct practicums every day. I think about, when I'm by Indorus Hall, I think about the 90-plus K-12 locations across public, private, and charter schools where our students teach, they learn how to teach, they bring the research, they bring knowledge about curriculum development, program evaluation, and many other things into a classroom, into an environment. I could go on. I could talk about the incredible contributions in our School of Architecture and Urban Planning, the depth for which, for decades, we have made a difference. The students, the community, the region, and the world all have benefited tremendously from UWM. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but I'm telling you this is why when I talk about the mandate, and when I talk about the challenge, when I talk about the threat that exists, this is why I'm fiercely supportive and will do everything I can for UWM to support us and the rest of UW system. As we move forward, I'd like to go into another piece that I normally would have spent a lot of time on in our spring plenary. I want to acknowledge and salute some things that we have been talking about. You've heard me talking about these for some time. We have some key areas that I think we would look at and say, well, what is some of the progress? Where are we at on some of these dimensions? I'll touch briefly upon these 5 areas. The first one is around student success. Student success can be defined in a number of different ways. We can talk about enrollments, we can talk about graduation, we can talk about retention, we can talk about life after graduation, and there's other dimensions as well. Student success is vitally important. It's why we are here in so many different ways. So I lead with that and want to tell you just a few quick things, not the long version, just really briefly some of the things. I'm simply going to work off this one slide for much of the remainder of my comments. Our enrollments have stabilized. Why that's important is in part because we have been enrolling fewer students every year for at least the last 4 years. The consequences of that financially have resulted in basically between $4 and $6 million in marginal tuition revenue year over year. Now, if you think about the magnitude of the cut, think about the potential magnitude of the cut for UWM, our enrollments can help in the future if we can continue what we did this year, which is stabilizing things. And the stabilizing right now is projected to have made a $1.2 million positive difference after 4 years of $4 to $6 million negative, again, year over year. If we can continue that trajectory, we can continue that will be significant. But more important than the financials is the quality of education experience and what happens in terms of retention and graduation and the impact on the lives of a lot of individuals that have meaning for this region, for their families, for themselves, for students. So if we look at retention, there's some great things that are going on. But before I get to that, I want to tell you next year, our admissions at this point, this date last year, are up 17%. Our transfer students for next fall are up unbelievably almost. We've gone back and checked these numbers. 223%. It's a smaller base, understand, so things look promising on the enrollment front. On retention, we have, you might have seen the provost's recent announcement about a campus-wide retention retreat, which is February 12th. There's a group that went to the John Gardner Institute to develop an intact team working across a number of areas on our campus to look at retention strategies and tactics, and are working on implementing that plan. It's very exciting. We also have to talk about what's happening in math. It's just one of our great success stories. We've shared preliminary results earlier in the summer or fall with the regents. In the summer, we had our folks present. We had Kyle Swanson and Phyllis King, who were able to talk about this with all of the regents and a large audience. And then in the fall, we had several other regents who came in and got a deep dive narrative on what's going on. We're spreading this across the system. We're bringing this to two-year schools. But here's some of the things that have happened as of last week, what we know. Math proficiency success. We're experiencing record enrollments for this spring in math. We're up 9% year over year overall. 19% year over year at the credit level. That's on Fund 101 and 189. Math department also had, over winterim, 60 students who completed a winter workshop bridge program for remedial students, which pushes our overall completion rate, C or better, to 75% for remedial math this fall. This is a remarkable success story. As we look at research capabilities and impact, and I'd like to talk much more about this, I'll be brief. We're going to be issuing next month our 2015 research report. There's some wonderful stories in there, remarkable progress that's been made. The theme is Made in Milwaukee, and we salute the heritage, we salute the history of Made in Milwaukee going back more than 150 years. But we really focus on the research that's had an impact, and it's a really neat work. This includes outstanding examples of our faculty who are so engaged in research with themselves, our students, staff, and partnerships. As a very recent example, and we could talk about almost weekly, the remarkable national, international news, the grants, the profile of UWM, but one of the latest things is that next week we will have one of our faculty, Professor Junhong Chin, who is in the College of Engineering and Applied Science, and he's going to receive next week the inaugural $50,000 UW System Regent Scholar Grant to engage undergraduate students in developing a prototype smartphone-supported sensor for low-cost, real-time monitoring of heavy metal ions in water. So this is a neat accomplishment. Rebecca Clapper and Sandra McClellan, they're in our School of Freshwater Sciences. Their research has been looking at the safety of our water and beaches and have been getting great press and great recognition. Adele Nasiri, College of Engineering, who's been creating energy microgrids. When we're in Washington, D.C. and talking to folks in the Department of Energy, they're very, very interested in this work and many other aspects related to a number of things that are in the works. Research is our differentiator. There's no question about it. That's what UWM's special niche is as compared to so many other elements in the UW system, and in particular in this region, as I've stressed before. On the community and alumni engagements, again, there's so many things I could talk about. One of special note is our recognition for the Carnegie classification. The Carnegie classification is not bestowed. that easily, and there's a tremendous amount of work that many of you were involved with helping put together the documentation for this. But it is a remarkable accomplishment, and it's recognizing that we're one of the top universities in the nation. I would thank Vice Chancellor Joan Prince for her leadership on helping pull the pieces together. When we think about other activities and engagement, we can think about the endowed professorship with Johnson Controls, which has recently been filled and is a wonderful accomplishment. We can think about our work with MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools, and Milwaukee Area Technical College on what we're calling M-Cubed, with a number of development aspects being put in place to increase the pipeline of students from our largest public school systems through UWM. Beyond those areas, when we talk about our climate and culture, there's some important developments that have happened. And again, there's many things that we could talk about, but two in particular I would stress. One is that I have charged the chairs at this point, and we are forming a Chancellor's Task Force on Sexual Violence and Prevention. They will focus, from my charge to them, on identifying training needs, assessment and evaluation practices, and communication policies and practices. This task force is being finalized as I give you this address, and it is being co-chaired by Jasmine Taylor in Equity and Diversity Services, Sue McCarthy in the Women's Resource Center, and Bill Keith, a professor in the English department. Members will be comprised of representatives from across campus, from different governance groups, from athletics, from the Dean's Council, our faculty, LGBT office, multicultural centers, UWM Police Department, and other areas. The second piece within our campus climate is the Ombuds Council. And in October, 19 people applied for our new Ombuds Council, and 10 were chosen to join. Professor Nadia Fuad is leading the efforts in this area. There's a new website that will be launched this week at ombuds.uwm.edu, and there will be training in early February, and Ombuds Council members will each take turns staffing the Ombuds line and website. I would urge you, as we go through this period of uncertainty, of almost certain questions and the potential volatility that happens when we have such important issues to be discussed, to be respectful, to recognize there's going to be differences of opinions on campus and off, and for us to have a good, healthy climate with respect to some of the decisions that will have to be made over the next several months. The last area is the elevation of our visibility, our brand, and our image. We have a number of activities that we've been working on in this area. We have gone into high schools in Illinois that we've never gone into before, to have our presence, to have our people, to have our posters, our materials present there. We're increasing our digital marketing presence. We're including it's called Right Now section on our homepage. This infuses Panther Pride comments. It draws from students who are proud to be here, and it's really a wonderful, positive part of UWM. We've got an increased media strategy where we're going into social media. We're going into a number of different venues that we haven't before with much more emphasis. These are updates and great examples of why UWM matters across the areas that I've talked about so far today. We sent a videographer recently down to the Panama Canal just a few weeks ago. This was Chris Baylor and his team, and they captured the research work of Professor Stefan Schnitzer. His biological students were included, and this is one of the more extraordinary examples of why the investment and further investments in UWM are so important.
Here, every day is an adventure. That's how it really is. Here in the tropical forest, every time I come to the field, I think, okay, let's see what I'm going to see today. From mainland, we have to come to the island by boat. And from here, we as well have to use smaller engine boats that take us to the different remote sites.
Sometimes it can be a little scary when you're passing a boat that's maybe 3 or 4 stories high and you're in this tiny aluminum boat making tiny little waves.
The research that we're doing, there's not another place in the world that this research has been done.
Lianas are a key component of tropical forests, and they have been a key component of tropical forests for millions of years.
We're interested in how the competition between lianas and trees might affect the structure of the forest and the amount of carbon that is within the forest.
Tropical forests store and accumulate 30–40% of all of the terrestrial carbon on the planet. And so tropical forests are really incredibly sensitive ecosystems, and they're changing, and we're getting an increase in these vines, which is leading to a decrease in tree survival, the number of trees, and the size of trees. And that's going to have a huge impact on carbon dynamics in tropical forests.
Well, barometer 309.
If the carbon is not being pulled into the trees, it's actually sitting in the atmosphere, in the air, and it's causing problems for global warming and global climate change.
Lianas won't take over rainforests, but they'll become more abundant, which will make trees become less abundant.
What I'm trying to understand is at which point do lianas become harmful for the tree?
We weren't initially studying these questions for anything related to climate change. And that's the power of pursuing fundamental questions in science, is that you understand how the processes work, and then you can adapt to changes that are occurring in the environment. My students, both undergrads and grads, get to interact with some of the top tropical biologists in the world. And it's something that we can offer students through the Smithsonian, but we can't offer it without the Smithsonian. So we're really fortunate to be able to work with them so closely.
It's amazing that Stefan, that he is encouraging all of his students and all of these undergraduates to come here. And I think for UWM, it's an amazing opportunity that their students are able to come here.
He's an astounding professor that does world-class work, unlike no one else, but is yet so humble about it. It's kind of awe-inspiring because you usually think of people that get to such an astute level in their careers that they wouldn't have time for an undergraduate. But he makes the time.
I think it's pretty amazing that UWM is able to send students down to Panama every year, and we're able to basically brag about the research that we're doing and that how cool UWM is.
Every individual in the world should come to the rainforest and actually try to see and try to understand maybe just a tiny glimpse of it, because it's going to open people's minds and it's going to certainly change the way they see themselves in the world.
As I review that, I not only admire the work that's done by our students and Dr. Schnitzer, but I think about every single one of you, how we could make that same type of video. I think about the impact, I think about the remarkable work that's done, the learning, the life-changing experiences that happen. And this video is just simply one that we have today. Tomorrow we will have another and another. Every day there are so many thousands of things that happen across our 28,000 students, our almost 10,000 employees that we have. If we include all the different employee categories, we basically have about 3,500 full-time employees, but we've got an awful lot of part-time and adjunct and other important individuals. So as I close these comments, let me reinforce the idea that we are facing unprecedented challenges. There's no question about it. We can't take this lightly. This is something that is very concerning to all of us. But we have such remarkable strengths that are aimed at an important mission. And I call upon all of you, as we face an uncertain future, to keep that first and foremost and think about how we can together address these challenges. We will preserve our priorities, the types of things that I've outlined today, the types of areas around our students, our research, our engagement, creating a culture that is one that allows and supports this, while we also elevate our brand, our image. Having spent many years here, I've seen the power of our impact, and I continue to think about all of our experiences, the human aspect of this, and just how challenging these days are and will be. But I'm confident in you. I am comfortable with the work that we are doing together, and that's what's so critically important, that we have to join arms in a way we haven't before and marshal our best. And then we can resolve these challenges, but we've got some tough times ahead. So those are my comments, and at this point what I'd like to do is just preview the outline. We'll have Mark Schwartz join us, then Sarah Morgan, then Stan Yasitis, and Ryan Sorensen. Then we'll open it up for questions and answers. Thanks. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chancellor. I've been contemplating what I'm going to say, and those of you that know me know that I'm not one for unscripted comments, so this is kind of a dangerous time for me. I have to tell you, I've been contemplating the goals that I set for my life, the things that I thought for the world, and I'm deeply troubled, and I'm angry, and I'm realizing I have to control that, and the Star Wars kind of thing. I can't give in to the dark side, but nevertheless, so what I want to tell you is, I think though one of the things that has come through to me is that the need for shared governance has never been clearer to me than in times like this. This is where we do the sifting and winnowing to find the truth. And perhaps what we say will not be listened to, but we will say it, and we will get it out there, and we will make sure that what is being done is understood as best we can. So with that, I just want to give you a brief kind of outline of what's been going on from the University Committee's perspective. We first became aware of these things in late December and have been carefully monitoring them since that time. A lot of the information that finally came out was about all that we had been told, so it wasn't, in that sense, all that surprising. What we are doing, you are probably aware that there was a meeting on campus last Friday initiated by Dean Swain. I thank him for initiating that. There was a student newspaper article about that. There was also a follow-up article related to our UC meeting yesterday. I'm kind of not used to that kind of scrutiny of the things we do, but I think overall it was a good thing in that regard. Our University Committee has been looking at these issues very thoroughly, and one of the things we asked for and have been granted an op-ed that will appear in the Sunday paper, and we have prepared a draft for that. And we will be sharing that, or I will be sharing that draft with the Faculty Senate tomorrow at the Faculty Senate meeting. So as we look at this situation and as we move forward, I also urge you, this is why we created the ucnews.uwm.edu page. We are trying to post all the information that we have there as we have it. So I encourage you to look there to see the latest information that we have. Obviously, stuff's been moving like a swirl here. There are a tremendous number of articles out there. There are quotes directly. The governor was on the radio this morning, so you can hear some of his direct comments. But in any event, I think I'll close at that point, and I just want to say again that shared governance, in my mind, is what has made our university great. And I thank you for the privilege of working with you.
Thank you and good afternoon. As we have heard, we're facing very difficult times. I want to thank all of you, and in particular the academic staff that are in attendance today, either in person or online. This event is an important milestone in an effort by Chancellor Mone to create a more inclusive campus where all governance groups, academic staff, classified staff, faculty, and students are at the table. This event was proposed by our most recent past chair for the Academic Staff Committee, Kathleen Koch. Prior Chancellor Plenary addresses, as you heard, have been followed by a meeting of the faculty. The request from Academic Staff Committee was to uncouple the Chancellor's plenary address from the faculty meeting and provide an opportunity for all governance groups to come together. I also want to thank the University Committee and the Classified Staff Advisory Council for their openness to this new inclusive approach. I think this is an important demonstration of our intent to collaborate on achieving UWM's strategic plan and vision for the university as a powerful force for economic growth and improved quality of life in our state. While we do not yet know what lies ahead and what it means for any of us, I want to assure all academic staff that we will be at the table as discussions move forward. We will be represented in the Chancellor's Budget Planning Task Force and also have representation on other key committees and task forces. We realize this is very important to all of our constituents as well as to the committee itself. Our goals as the Academic Staff Committee are to represent the interests of academic staff across campus to the best of our ability, to ensure that the policies and procedures we have worked so hard to put in place are followed, and to keep you informed about issues as they arise. The academic staff is close to completing a report that looks at the appointment types held by teaching academic staff, which is sponsored by the Provost's Office, initiated by past ASC Chair Gene Salzer, and completed by the Center for Economic Development. While we realize that the recommendations that come out of that report may be impacted by the current budget issues, we still plan to release that report at our March meeting of the Academic Staff Senate. Please plan to attend that meeting on March 10th at 2:30. As I said in my email to you on Monday, I'm encouraged by the transparency and inclusiveness of Chancellor Mone, but we must remain vigilant and involved as we navigate through the rough water that lies ahead. At the March 10th meeting of the Academic Staff Senate, we will be finalizing the ballot for elected academic staff committees, as well as campus and faculty committees requiring academic staff representation. This will be your opportunity to add your name to the ballot if not initially selected, as long as you meet the eligibility requirements. Please plan to attend to ensure wide representation of academic staff across campus. Please also plan to attend any campus forums or discussions regarding budgetary issues. If you have further questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me or any members of the Academic Staff Committee or Academic Staff Senate. I look forward to us all working together to manage these difficult times. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Stan Usides. I chair the Classified Staff Council. I work in the Department of Admissions. You can reach me at extension 2940. I don't know about you, but I feel a great deal of reassurance that our Chancellor has expressed clearly how he feels about what's going on and what they might be trying to do to us. Thank you, Chancellor Mone. And I'd like to thank Chancellor Mone for his ongoing support of the Classified Staff Council, the newest governance body on campus. This forum today is an example of the respect that he's showing for governance on our campus, and it's important. Classified Staff Council, we've been busy. As you know, there's a new university personnel system in the works. It's supposed to be in place and up and running on this July 2015. We've been charged by the regents to develop policies for our campus. We've completed several. We've got a grievance procedure that we've worked out. We've got a layoff procedure that we've worked on. Hopefully that we won't have to use it, but it's there. And about a dozen other key procedures that have to be in place for a personnel system to work come July. We're going to share that information, and we want to share that information. One of the first things we'll be doing along that lines is an open forum. It's going to be during spring break. We thought that would be a good opportunity in terms of traffic levels, allowing a lot of people to attend. It's going to be held in conjunction with the Human Resources Department on Friday the 20th of March at 9:30 in Lubara Hall, South 151. And I'd ask the classified staff members, try to get there. These are going to be how things work around here in the future. If you're a supervisor of a classified staff person, you should probably come too, because those are the rules that you're going to be operating under as well as us. UPS is going to affect everybody on campus, so this forum is an opportunity to get your feet wet in what's going on with that. Governance is different for classified staff. Ever since Act 10 changed the way the world is for us as classified staff members, we've been building this council and our participation in campus activities. The council is going to be asking members of the classified staff more and more to participate. Chancellor Mone mentioned a few opportunities for that are coming up right now. What will be key for the successful participation of the classified staff is support for that work. Recognition that service to the university is as much a part of classified staff service as it is for every other group on campus. Supervisors have direct impact on that ability to serve. And I would like to ask and encourage you to facilitate, move that forward, and let us join in on the efforts that we're facing. All the way down from the top levels, deans, division heads, supervisors, department chairs, we need your support to do this. It's different. We can do it. We've had a lot of success so far, and I'm looking forward to it. With all the changes that are coming, and I don't think it's a question of if, I think it's a question of when. There has never been a time when it's been more important for us to all recognize that we're in this together, and we are going to have to work together to see us through. Thank you.
All right, best for last. Again, thank you, Chancellor Mone, for putting this together. I appreciate you giving a voice to all the shared governance groups. This school year, the Student Association has been very busy. One of our greatest accomplishments that I'd like to point out is that we have the most diverse student senate ever. We have students from many different backgrounds. We have undergrads, grads, and PhD students. We have veteran students, international students, and students that identify as LGBT+. Having a Senate that is comprised of many different students provides us with a great opportunity to have many different ideas. These ideas are what drive the Student Association to be student-focused and accountable. A little bit of what we've been working on this past semester is working on legislation improving the lives of students' college experience. Some legislation that we passed include calling for the state to provide in-state tuition for undocumented students. Also, legislation. We also passed legislation focused on improving the veterans' classroom experience. During the election season, we also participated and worked with many student organizations and community members to register students to vote and make sure that they got out and vote. We are also in ongoing discussions and involvement regarding the new student union project. The Student Association at UWM has also been playing a significant role in developing UW system student representatives. This provides all elected student government officials with a strong unified voice to communicate effectively with the state legislature and UW administration. Representing over 28,000 students is always difficult and provides us with many challenges. But these challenges keep us moving and keep on pursuing to strengthen the student's voice. We always continue to hope and to improve the greater student participation. Thank you. And I'll turn it back to Chancellor Mone.
Well, thank you, Mark, Stan, Sarah, and Ryan, for your great comments and great perspectives. I would say from a pilot, from an experiment, this was a success, and I'd like to see this continue. And it does provide a great opportunity for us to engage more and to hear more perspectives. With that said, I'd open it up for questions and answers for myself or for any of our governance group leaders that you've just heard from. So feel free to ask away, please. We have a mic coming, so I'm sorry. Carrie is bringing that mic.
So it appears from your from the news reports as well as from your comments that it looks like a massive shift of transfer from the legislative to the executive, because in some sense we see the regents on the board as representative of the executive and not necessarily the representatives of the UW schools, separate independent schools. Are we going to have any, so in that sense, the flexibility that's gained is gained by the executive, not necessarily by separate individual schools. So is there any talk going on or possible about the composition of the Board of Regents?
What I understand right now, and first qualifier is that what the governor has announced thus far in his press release yesterday was a draft document that would be announced, I anticipate, in more detail next Tuesday. The composition of the Board of Regents, in the narrative that I've heard so far in the discussion with other chancellors and directly from the system president, is that the current Board of Regents would transfer over identical to become the governing body for the public authority. Now, if we look at the experience that happened in the UW Health when it became a public authority, it did change as the legislature reviewed it, as I understand it, and the legislature wanted to have some additional membership from the legislature. I don't know what the composition ultimately became, but the proposal right now is to have our Board of Regents in the exact same roles, the same procedure for selecting, for appointing them, the same confirmation approval. That's what we know right now. Again, it's early. I can't say what will happen in that regard, but that's what we know right now. Okay.
So the thing that I can't seem to get my head around is the simple fact that our governor says that there's just the funding for our schools would change, but there's somehow funding for like $200 million plus for a new Buck Stadium. So I'm just wondering why we so. Yeah. Right now, it just seems like, oh, well, this is just what's going to happen. Why aren't we using that as ammunition? Instead of saying, hey, instead of funding this thing that the MBA could probably afford, that you actually take that money and use that for the UW system. Yeah.
No, your observation is astute, and I think as you look at the juxtapositioning of the headlines, depending on which news release you saw, they were right next to each other, and it really makes the contradiction glaring. Here's what I'll say, I don't know, I mean, I can't speak for the state, for the governor, for the thinking behind that. I will say, as we've worked with the Bucks in terms of some of the partnerships that we've had for our student interns, for the marketing, the co-marketing that we're doing, we want the Bucks to be successful. Let's get that out there first and foremost. They are a vital Milwaukee institution, but we are a long-standing, critically important institution for this region. For us not to have the support, for us not to have the type of funding, it is, as I pointed out in my comments, it is one of the most damaging, one of the most concerning things that I think affect us all. I just can't speak for how that transaction is working or what the thinking is behind that. It's beyond my pay grade. It's beyond my province. But yeah, it's an important observation, and it does, I think, speak to some of the priorities. Now, as I understand it, again, from just having read the headlines, not being part of any of the conversations, I think that the argument is there is some self-funding. It's not new monies and dollars that are taken. So we represent, and one of the arguments that, to your first part of your question, we represent an important part of the state budget, and they're viewing the UW system as an element where there can be some money that is reduced, and that's the unfortunate situation that we're in right now, independent of all the other factors that are involved, but we need to be higher on the priority list from my view. It's just simply too important for education not to be getting increases, investments in higher ed, given the vitality that we bring to this state, to our students, to the region and beyond. So, yes, there was a hand over here for, yes.
Thank you, Chancellor Mone, and thanks to all of the shared governance leaders. I want to address what I think is a core value, maybe a talking point, and actually an answer to the question about the arena funding. It's also above my pay grade, but I'm going to try to answer it anyway. I think we really need to challenge the rhetoric that couples a $300 million cut with the promise of freedom for the system. There's nothing about these cuts that should be confused with freedom, unless you want to talk about freedom from jobs or freedom from a high-quality public education. Or more seriously, if you want to talk about how the elimination of Chapter 36 may imperil academic freedom. Both the cuts and the elimination of Chapter 36 are the products of ideology. So this is the answer to the question about the arena. And it's an ideology that favors privatization. It's not a budget crisis. The budget shortfall was created by investments in tax cuts, the prison system, and roads. Financing tax cuts on the back of our public education system is a choice, like funding a new arena is a choice. So what I'm hoping is that we think more about how we promote our core value of a truly public university system, a system that's built on shared governance and a system that has in fact built the state of Wisconsin. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Allender, for your eloquence, and I agree with you absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know I'm hard to see.
Yeah.
I don't take up a lot of space. So I'm wondering, how can you share with us the talking points that get developed? So I get that business owners in the community can write op-eds. What can we do? What can I do as an employee of UWM, a taxpayer, a voter? What can I do to add my voice to yours, to theirs, to hers, to the message that this is important, what we do is important?
Yeah, thank you for your question. It allows me to reconfirm and clarify how we will be developing a set of talking points, a communication plan, and my call for all of you to engage with your neighbors, for you to talk with legislators, for you to talk with any individuals that you can to advocate on our behalf. And you're absolutely right. We will be cultivating, we will be working with all the different groups that I mentioned, and you, for this very important cause. Tom Lujak, our Vice Chancellor for University Relations, has been preliminarily working on some of these pieces. We'll be working with our task force, our budget planning task force, as part of that group as well. And we'll be having, I will be able to share with you on Tuesday, February 10th, at least an outline of what some of those points would be and what the steps will be for us to move forward. One of the reasons why we picked that particular date, you might be saying, well, why don't we have that meeting? Why don't we have more already? I think you can appreciate what we have right now is a preview of what the governor will announce on next Tuesday, and then the Board of Regents on Thursday and Friday. So there's a lot of processing that will have to happen, and then the provosts meet in Madison on Monday, all the provosts across the system, in addition to the meetings on Thursday and Friday with the chancellors, provosts, and other administrators. And then we think by Tuesday we will, it'll be right on the heels of that, but we think we'll be able to bring more information forward. But we will proceed with those points. Thank you. Great question. Yes. So, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question that relates to some of the things just said. One, I'm not clear how what you said about no new tax monies going. It seems to me that it's tax money that we used to get to pay for everything else that is now shifting. So the idea that this is no new money or something seems to me a little weird. But the other thing is, you mentioned Tim Sheehy being so enthusiastic about UWM, but I noticed again in that newspaper article where there was the juxtaposition that Sheehy and his group came out forcefully for supporting the $220 million. And although they supposedly are dedicated to us, I didn't see similar reports, similar broadcasts from them. And what hope do you have that, it's going to play out any different than it has been with the Sheehy and the rest of them?
Yeah, well, good question. There's two parts to your question as I understand it. One is bringing us back to the support of MMAC for the Bucks and the issue of taxation for them. And my comment, and again, I'm not the expert. I did happen to hear on the news last night, there was a sports attorney who was talking, he was drawing the graphs and the math, and as I understand it, this is funds that are generated off the players, the NBA players, both the Bucks as well as other visiting teams that create that tax support. So it can be, in that sense, self-funded. That's the extent to my knowledge. I don't know, more than that. So, yeah. So that aside, Tim is a good friend of the university. You may have heard him at the June 5th or June 6th address to the Board of Regents, where he stood up and made a strong case for UWM, and I will be asking him to do that as well in the future in terms of both public and behind-the-scenes types of settings. So Tim has been a strong, long-standing good friend of UWM, but I think he can be supportive, and again, that's the idea. I wouldn't want this to be, and I wouldn't want to position this as us versus the Bucks in any way. Unfortunately, the timing seems to present it and suggest that, but I don't see this as the trade-off in that way. Yeah. So this gentleman has been having his hand up for a while.
My name is Greg Schell. I'm a University of UWM alumni. In regards to the legislators, I'll give you all an example that's effective. My brother was in Vietnam. My father didn't want him to go. So every day, my father called Congressman Zablocki and told him, get my son out of Vietnam. He came out of Vietnam 1 month sooner by just constantly calling legislator. I'm with another organization, and I saw that one of their they had the Keystone XL pipeline. When I was with the march, when I went to UWM with March, with the alumni, the representatives there are waiting to hear from you. Either they hear from the lobbyist or they hear from you. And unless you tell them that you find, which is just elementary, that education is priority over sports, they won't know. And the more you talk to your students and let them know that, the greater the outreach and the outspeak will be to them. But you have to communicate to the students that their education is being challenged by forces that are unknown. And the problem is, those students are our future.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, over here, Sarah.
I'm really concerned about waiting until February 10th to start disseminating talking points to the university community. It seems to me like the issue is making a great deal of press right now, and that we risk the development of a certain amount of issue fatigue, and the fact that the citizens of Wisconsin will have made up their mind, having already seen all of the press to date, and frankly, the Walker administration statements pertaining to, and his Republican supporters' statements pertaining to the budget, and how this will, set things right with the UW system and make them be accountable and more responsible with their funds. And after all, look at those slush funds that they've had all this time. We can't afford for this to be another UW system slush fund boondoggle. There's far too much at stake. And personally, I think that the time is now to start trying to get ahead of the issue and not be trailing 2 weeks from now and a week after the governor drops the second bomb.
So I certainly feel that urgency as well. My only hesitation, which I'm going to follow with a suggestion, is that we don't know yet, and this is what I mentioned earlier, is if we know early enough next week, if we see where things are going with the official announcement, again, what we've got right now is a preview of what will be part of the budget, I think next week we can put things together. But let me refer to Tom Lujak, our Vice Chancellor. Tom, is that fair that we could put at least a draft set of ideas together next week? Or
Sure, you bet. You bet. One of the challenges that we face is that, as the Chancellor mentioned earlier, we don't know exactly what the cut will be to UWM. And Sarah, there's nothing that stops individuals in this room from, on their own time, with their own email, reaching out and communicating their view immediately. We've heard a lot of comments here today, but as the Chancellor pointed out, the Board of Regents is going to be reviewing this, and we are getting some direction in terms of what the cuts that we see, or what the budget plan that we see next February 3rd, next Tuesday, will actually mean on a campus-by-campus basis. I'm in the legislature. I'm not in the legislature. I'm in the Capitol, meeting with legislators on a regular basis, and they want definition. They want details, and the notion of broad overstrokes doesn't work as well as when you come in with specific facts. And that's really one of the reasons why we are waiting to get as much information so we can be as accurate as possible when we do present the institutional view. That said, the Chancellor, obviously we have media here today. This program, or this event, will be broadcast in multiple platforms tonight, and that it's very important that they know the general position that we have here, and that communication through the Chancellor will continue on a daily basis over the next week while we wait for the Governor to actually present the detail behind his plan.
Thank you, Tom. And I will be on a number of different statewide programs tomorrow and Friday for interviews, for media appearances, making the case for UW-Milwaukee. As I mentioned, if it does seem that we know enough that we can put together that compelling, powerful package, I'd like to get that idea. I have your same instinct. Sooner it would be helpful, but I don't want us to go down a path that overstates or reacts in a way that we don't quite know yet. Certainly, general directions we do know, but we don't know some of the truer impact that we will experience. But if we can, next week we will get some draft language and some suggested talking points out for you.
So I think I'm here next. A lot of people, this is directly in response to these issues, and I have 3 modest proposals for this group. It's neither a question nor an answer. But I hope you'll find this useful regarding our presence on social media, which I think is sort of like the dark matter of the universe of journalism. The first project, action, is the MJS discussion board meeting. We're getting hammered right now by right-wing operatives in the comment sections of local publications. We need your voice, all of our voice, to counter the scurrilous accusations of politicians, trolls, and operatives. So, I don't need to clap, I just need y'all to do this. So, create an account on MJS Online and participate in the discursive equivalent of cage fighting. Don't be shy, but be truthful, civil, and never feed the trolls. Go beyond MJS as well, as this is a state issue. The second thing that I would like us all to do is what I'm calling a friendly Facebook flood. Like, if you are on Facebook, if not, get on it. You know, all your kids are on it. So like the pages of statewide politicians and tell them what you think about these proposed budget cuts. Comment on their posts. It needn't even be relevant to what they are posting on. Just tell them what a $300 million cut to the system will mean. How do you, for instance, cut $20 million from UWM by July 1st? Number 3, and my last point of action here, is a February 3rd Twitter storm. Join in a campaign to tweet the damages on February 3 when Walker's proposed budget is trending. Using the hashtag #SaveOurSystem, that is hashtag #SaveOurSystem, address the following question. How do these cuts harm UWM, higher education, and our students? Do it in 140 characters or less, of course. I know that that will be difficult for some of my colleagues. That hashtag again on February 3, it's a coordinated Twitter storm, is to save our system. Now there are a few other things that I could propose in a more humorous way. I think we should do a bake sale in the union to perhaps set the target at $20 million, and we could follow that with a Kickstarter campaign for a $300 million outlay that I'm sure we'll get at least a couple $100 worth for. Thank you.
Thanks, Lane.
I guess it's my turn.
Maria, please.
Hi. Mark, thank you for this day and for bringing us here, all of us together. I am very reassured by the fact that we have a chancellor who has been an active member of our shared governance from all sides of that so-called bridge to the dark side or the bright side. It's the same side. And I want to share one thought that I shared in the many meetings that you had on campus before this all came public. It was happening at the same time when the demonstrations in Paris were happening. And in my mind, while I'm just as concerned about the budget cut as everybody else, Je suis Charlie was also important. Chapter 36 symbolically is even more tectonic than the large budget cut. It really is about democracy, because if we cannot practice it in our daily lives, how can we teach it to our students? How can we prepare them for a life of democracy? And it is about freedom of speech, about freedom of inquiry, about being able to do all research, about being able to report the results of that research. And I think for me, protection of shared governance and protection of freedom of inquiry and freedom of speech are really, really important, and we must not have them swept under the carpet of the 300 millions, even though that is a really massive carpet. So that is my message to you. And there is a budget number that I want to remind those of you who've been in forums before. In our system, for $1 that a student and their parents and everybody else who contributes give to the system, the state used to match with the state dollars $1, and at UWM, that number used to be for $1 that a student contributes. It used to be matched by roughly $0.50. I'm rounding here. This still is an equity issue that we have been talking about for a long time. Can we remind our system that they should not forget about that when we're looking at how to cope with the 300 million?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Maria, for your important statement and well-spoken support. That's just another quiver, another arrow in our quiver for the types of arguments that we will make for UWM. There continues to be that inequity I think many of you remember the funding allocation work group that was put together with a previous chancellor that we were a part of, and unfortunately that did not move the needle in terms of receiving greater funding for UWM. But that's just one of a number of things that we will be reminding folks of as they determine how the cut will be distributed across the UW system. We have great needs, but more importantly, we have a great case that can be and must be made in terms of why the investment in UWM from the state needs to be protected. So I agree with you completely. There was, I think, a person up above that... Oh, okay. All right.
I came downstairs. Thank you. Sorry. I have what I think is a really practical question. A lot of people I've been talking to are very fearful about expressing themselves on campus, on uwm.edu, or any of these sorts of venues. I'm wondering if someone from your staff or the legal office could give us clear guidelines on what political activity is and is not allowed. It seems to me we should be able to talk about the fate of our university without being worried about being spied on by NSA or the governor's office and taken to task for that.
We have actually, thank you, Connie Jo. We have actually drafted language that just in that particular context. Jolie, can you help me out? Tomorrow or Friday, could we have that out? Is that kind of a timeline that you think we might be able to put together? Okay. Okay. Okay, so in the next 24 to 48 hours at the latest, we will have that kind of guidance out. And by the way, it will be very similar to the type of note that we issue every time around election time, you know, the use of campus resources in our time and things like that. So it basically draws from that. But excellent suggestion, we'll have it out. Yep. Yes, John.
Hi, thank you. Hello, how you doing there? Thank you very much for your words today. Practicality, let me put it this way. Autonomy sounds great. It's a sexy thing to put out there. Well, you know, this is really privatization of the state system. What I wanted to know, if there's been discussion, or if you've been proactive about discussion as to the reality of this will be, we might have the same regions, but these regions now are going to have to take on the responsibility of funds, of raising funds, of dispersing funds, of even a greater magnitude than they have in the past. I don't know how they can do it. I guess I'm asking the question, have there been discussion at local campus levels that each campus may have their own advisory board, their own regents board, their own managerial board, so that we can take advantage of the autonomy that we're implied to receive?
At this point, there has not been any discussion along those lines, John. The understanding that I have is that in the future they do like the idea of decentralization, where much of the decisions would be happening at a more local level. But to your point, this is a Board of Regents that will have a different role. There will be different skill sets required, different expertise, because that Board of Regents operated with a different UW system staff and legislative relationship, and now that will all change. So I could envision that discussion happening, but to this point, there hasn't been any. I like your idea of, well, let's be proactive with that, and when I'm next week with the Board of Regents, we'll see where they're at, and we'll ask that question about to what extent will there be or could there be some, I don't know, to get it to that local level. Now, if you just think about the mechanics of it for a moment, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but you've basically got 18 regents, you've got 13 four-year institutions and 13 two-year institutions. So there'd probably have to be you'd have to think about some regional approach if you were to go down that path. And that may be one of the answers. You know, again, just basically kind of thinking out loud here, that could be something that we could see, I would potentially anticipate as a way to strengthen and develop programs that are potentially more effective for UW system. But that's just an off-the-cuff type of thought about that. Might be a way to advance that. Thank you for your question. And by the way, I want to thank you all again for joining us, as if I didn't stress that enough, for your participation today, for this dialogue, and also for any further conversations that we will be having to encourage you to continue to participate. We do have time. I know a number of people have left, but they're probably wanting to hit that reception. Time for maybe another question or two, and then we can continue the conversation in 280. Here, please. Yes.
Chancellor, I'm heartened to hear you say, I can't help but be angry. I was starting to get concerned that you were starting off with what I felt like was falling into a rhetorical trap of talking about how efficiencies might mitigate the damage, and the anger came later. I understand Professor Schwartz's comment that needs to be channeled in a certain way, but I hope you're going to lead with that passion, rather than talking about efficiencies and mitigating, because the potential damage is really extraordinary.
Yeah.
One other thought that also feels like it got buried. When I'm concerned that number 2 of the top 3 points that you foreground in terms of what makes us special is contributing to the economy. Of course, that's important. I don't think it's what distinguishes us as a research institution, and I don't think it's something that, well, our failure to communicate that is part of why the sort of rhetoric that's going on now is taking hold. And what you said a bit later after the remarkable video that you showed is, I think, what we should be illustrating, is use the term life-changing. And that's what Professor Schnitzer's work does. That's what the work of all my wonderful colleagues here does. And we need to communicate why we change people's lives, not just how we give them skills to do a job. Thank you.
Thank you. Joel, I agree completely, and I want you to know when I say open, I need your help. And it's those types of suggestions that I listen to and want to incorporate as I go forward in terms of crafting the message to best position UWM. I've got the passion, I've got the anger, I've got the emotion. It comes out in, I hope, the right places at the right time. But, you know, I haven't had an opportunity to address you all as Chancellor with the interim taken off, but I can tell you I will and have made mistakes and need your guidance to make sure we move forward in a way that is the strongest and most compelling. I couldn't agree with you more about the life-changing experiences, and I think if you've heard me talk in any other campus addresses, I have used that phrase an awful lot because it is so true. It's so important. So thank you. Yeah.
Chancellor Mone, I'm still with your very civics-like slide about sort of the process that happens once the budget is proposed. Yeah. It was nicely processy and it was illuminating. And I was thinking as you were going through that piece of the presentation that it would be important for us to be physically present at a lot of those sessions. And I'm wondering if we're thinking ahead about how that might happen. Buses, delegations, students. When we show up in Madison, we are heard differently. Of course, we should talk to our neighbors and talk to our students and be on Facebook. Many of us are doing all of that. But I think having us there for the process, having a witnessing and a presence at that will be crucial. And are there plans to do that?
Yeah, that will be part of when we talk about a communication plan, not just the talking points, but some of the things that can be organized, can be done. We will cover those elements as well. And I will also talk with governance group leaders about some of the organization that can be done at that level, as well as in some of the other venues and conversations that we're having. But that's an excellent point to make sure we include and incorporate that in. So,
Chancellor, on the PowerPoint slide that you showed concerning your stance towards these issues, I realize that this is not a fait accompli yet, as you said on Friday and indicated today, with respect to, for instance, problems with shared governance or intervention, let's say, into shared governance, changes to the tenure process in particular. I didn't see the word tenure mentioned on the slide that concerns your stance. And I wonder if you would consider adding that word, because as Maria was getting to a moment ago, that word for me, at least, is equivalent to academic freedom and inquiry.
Yeah.
And if tenure, and it's a big, I don't really think it is a big if, I think it is going to be on the board. If that comes up, I'd like your assurances that you're going to defend that with as much vigor and enthusiasm as you would shared governance.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, the answer is yes, absolutely. I will protect that to the extent that I possibly can and advocate in any venue for that. if I don't have tenure on the slide, it's because when I think of Chapter 36 and having read through carefully all the tenets of Chapter 36, it's in that document, and so it's code to me for that. So I will explicitly talk about shared governance and tenure explicitly. So thank you for the correction, and we'll make that note in any of the distribution of the slides that will be available for this. So we'll make that. Thank you.
Just a really quick one. If there is a resource problem that is using state resources to do the kind of advocacy that I think a lot of us would like to have, I think it would be really helpful if there were some sort of foundation account specifically set up so that if the university needs to be able to do more advocacy type work in some way, I think that you would have a lot of participation in something like that. But because I think sometimes we struggle with what we're allowed to do within, but we also do need to have the structure that we have.
Yeah, we'll find a way, or whether it's a foundation or some other non-state resource that would allow and encourage our employees to be involved with that. Great point. So we'll figure that out. Yeah, I don't know the answer offhand, but we'll follow up with that. Yes.
Well, I wanted to say that that I was pleased to hear you to have the representatives here, that you included them and they were able to give their opinion. I also was pleased when you said you weren't going to make it a debate between us and the Bucks, because I feel like so often we get sidetracked when there's crisis and we look at who should we fight, and it's not the Bucks. I want Tim Sheehy not to have to choose. Mm-hmm. I want the Bucks owners to look at making donations and supporting what we do. Right. I feel like Milwaukee sometimes looks at how do we get better at infighting, and I think this is an opportunity for us to figure out how to be inclusive and make this community solidly behind us and not feel like they have to choose between us or anyone else, because we as a region really deserve much more than we get from the state, and how do we show the power of this community?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well put. Let me just add perhaps a comment that reinforces that. We had an event for one of our home games at the Panther Arena, and we invited many of our dear friends, our incredible sponsors. I can tell you that we have 5 our capital campaign co-chairs, and 2 of them happen to be minority Bucks owners. We have very good friends, some of our large donors on campus, who happen to comprise at least 6 that I know of the minority owners of the Bucks that are on our foundation or critically important for our support. There's a lot of common friends that we have, and so I think it reinforces your point that we want them to be successful. There's many vitally important things in Milwaukee that are critically important. Okay, one more question maybe, and then I can continue with questions in the reception. Yes.
Hi, Mark. Thank you. I just want to mention, I guess piggyback off of something that Sarah said, and that is we may not know exactly what's going to happen, but we have a pretty good idea about what's coming. And I guess I'm going to appeal to you back a semester or 2 when we talked about the best place to work. It's very difficult, obviously, to be an employee at UWM during these difficult times, but I think what's most difficult is the frustration of not knowing how and when and what to say when we are sort of under attack, and the rhetoric that we are reading on a daily basis and being confronted with on a daily basis. And while I appreciate that you and Tom really do have to be careful about what kind of information is put out there and how we respond to things, in my tenure here, I feel that we have been all too often reactive rather than proactive. And so I would really hope that, I know that it's important to get the information right, but I would really hope that as soon as possible, even if we can just get a couple bits and pieces that we can sort of share broadly and, again, inclusively, so that we're all sending the same message. Because a week or 2 from now, there's going to be that much more out there that we're going to have to respond to. And I think it's just really late.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your comment. And you're adding adding the reinforcement that I need to, as I think about our budget planning task force and the work that Johannes and Robin will be leading, how we really incorporate and perhaps even expand the work to think as well about our communication response coordination with that work. We already have communication built into that, but to really talk about the urgency with which we could put some things out there. So let's see what we can do, and we'll try to put up as soon as we have enough knowledge. And you're right. I mean, generally, directionally, the types of things that we can advocate and support, no matter what the magnitude of the cut is, there are some language issues and things like that we'll have to be sensitive to. But let's see if we can get some things out next week. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.